I've got a question for you both. So in your experience about suppliers and stuff, so obviously I've only ever printed my prints myself on a printer. And I know that both of you own a printer each. Now, if you were advising someone starting up, would you tell them to get a printer straight off the bat or go to suppliers? And I know there's a cost. Let's just say somebody's got, they've saved up their £500 to prepare themselves, right? Let's just go off that. Would you advise them to get a printer and do it just per print as and when they go, or do you think it's better to stock some stuff and just hold it? Because I know that the difference in stocking stuff is that you don't have that whole time consuming of sitting there printing, because when you've got to do a lot of prints, it is bloody time consuming. So what would you advise?
Well, I mean, I am an advocate for doing both. Like you said, I own a printer. I started off by ordering stock in bulk, and I still do both. So if I think a design's going to sell well, I'll order 25, 50, 100. I've got a couple of prints that sell pretty well year round. So when I run out of stock, I'll order 100 or so of them in A3 and A4. And when you're ordering at that quantity from a supplier online, you're talking pennies per print. You can get, I think you can get up to like a couple hundred for like 15 quid.
You can.
So that is always going to be a far more, you're going to have a far higher profit margin by going that route. But the reason I got a printer was mainly because I quickly realized, like, when I started my shop, I started with, I think maybe like half a dozen designs, but within a few months it had gotten to like 20, 25 designs. And all of a sudden I went from holding 150 prints to, if I wanted to have stock of every one of those prints that I did, and I didn't know how they were going to sell, I had to have like 3,000 prints in my house.
Yeah.
And so it was at that point I went like, if I buy a printer, the main reason I bought a printer was not a cost-cutting exercise. It was to help my creativity, because I'd already gotten to a point where I felt like, do I really want to create new work? Because I can't sell it, because I can't have it in my house.
Yeah.
But with a printer, like I'm more than happy to sit and draw something and create a piece of work that might sell 0, might sell 1. But I know that if somebody wants to pay the money for it, I've got the facility now to just create that one print. And it really isn't that difficult if you put a product up for sale and within a day you get 50 orders. Well, then you order prints and you pay a little bit more for quick delivery.
Yeah.
So I think ideally I would always say to somebody both. But I think for somebody like totally starting out, I would probably say buy a printer, because again, like, you want to put yourself in a position where, one, you can learn about printing. Really you need to know what different papers are like, how they react to ink, what different print settings do when you're printing off the work. But also, you don't want to be sat there like I am. Like, literally, I still have prints now that I ordered when I set up my shop, like, that I still haven't sold out of. And you don't want to have a few hundred prints in a year and you've sold a few.
Yeah.
Because it will probably make you feel a little bit shit. But if you don't, exactly, if you buy a printer, every time an order comes in, you get to lovingly create that product and send it out. And I think that can be a really positive feeling and help push you on more.
100% buy a printer, because for that, it was just purely for versatility for me. Your first year of doing this is going to be the majority one-off prints.
Yeah.
It's going to be unlikely that you get bulk orders, and the only reason I did it because I didn't have the money for a printer at the time. I didn't save it. And if you want to do bulk orders, do a pre-order. You can be clever about it.
Yeah, that's true.
If you do a pre-order online, you can put 50 up for sale. You can have no stock in the house or no printer in the house, and you can get the orders and tell people that they're going to be shipped within a week or 10 days or 2 weeks, and then you can order the 20 orders in bulk and then ship them yourself. So I would 100% save up, buy a printer, just one, for the satisfaction of creating the product yourself, two, for the versatility of being able to do 10 different pieces of artwork as 10 individual prints to 10 different people. That is going to cost you, if you get 10 bulk orders, a lot more than what it would if you had a printer. They're probably the same amount as buying the printer, but...
Do you guys find that there's a quality difference in between what you get from the printers and what you print yourself?
Yeah, the stuff I print myself is better.
Yeah,
for sure.
And that makes me feel better.
It's like it's not hugely different, but there is a slight difference, and I think that's simply because it's in the same way as saying like what's better, like a craft beer or a San Miguel. Like, you know, there's more individuality put into something that's kind of printed on a one-off basis, and I think like when you take printing to a mass manufacturing level, the quality's still great, but it isn't the same. It's not as rich.
My answer's slightly different in terms of what's a better product. The prints that I print visually are on high gloss paper, so the colours really splash out the page and are really visually good in the frame and on the print itself. But in terms of, I'm just a sort of bit of a purist in terms of art, so I prefer a matte finish with a shiny print in the middle on a really textured piece of paper, which I just see as a more quality product. So I can't get that myself. You know, I went back and forth with you, Carl. I reached out to you about 18 months ago now to say my printer washed out on matte paper, and I don't know how to fix it. And you just said, just get the gloss paper.
Yeah, you have to, unfortunately.
That made it look amazing, but not feel amazing, if that makes sense.
So I can't remember which way round it is, but the reason for that is the difference between pigment and dye printers.
Yeah.
So on a large scale, I think large scale printers are usually dye based.
Yeah.
So they soak into the paper a lot better.
Yeah.
Whereas pigment based printers typically work a lot better on a gloss where it sits on the top. The other thing for anybody listening to this to consider is matte paper to do properly requires like 4 or 5 times the amount of ink, I think, because it has to lay down so much ink to get those colors right. So again, so that's another thing. Like I have some really beautiful like uncoated or like high quality art papers here, but I literally like can't afford to print my prints on those and sell them because it takes up so much ink and then the paper is so expensive. But I think that's another thing for anybody listening to this to just do some research on it, because different kinds of paper, you might have different kinds of art, then require different kinds of printing, and it has a huge cost implication when we're talking about decent quality printers like any of the mid to high top range Canons. I think we'll maybe include a couple of links to printers that we each own in the description here, but you can't treat them like your your Epson that you printed off your CVs on when you were at college. You have to understand what you're doing, really.
Yeah, definitely. The one downside I would say about printing yourself, and I think this is the difference would be from getting it from printers, is that I've found if you don't put, because obviously I use an inkjet printer, if you don't put the print in a frame, after about 6 months the ink dries out and it starts to look very faded. Whereas obviously if you get it from the printers, you can use it like a poster, and you'd put a poster. Also, there's been occasions where people have contacted me and said, look, what's happened here? And I'm like, you've got to put it in a frame. If you put it behind the glass, or it doesn't even have to be glass, plastic these days, it will last forever. But as soon as you leave it in the air too long, the colours really start to dry out, and it just looks faded. So that's the only one downside, because that technically that's the reason why when I first started this I called it prints and not posters, because prints should go in a frame. Like photos, you don't necessarily when people take photos of family members and stuff and put them around the house, they don't not put them in a frame. You don't stick them on the wall. I mean you may do, but if you're in uni or something like that, but generally you just put them in a frame, and that's what I tell people to do with the prints, because they'll just dry out if you're using an inkjet printer. So that's something to be aware of if you are going to get a printer, that you make sure that you advise the customers to put the prints in the frame so they last longer.
I think we've sort of covered the next two-ish points there in terms of where are you going to store your stock? Are you going to hold stock, or are you going to drop ship? Because we've just mentioned then we've all got piles of prints, piles of products in our house because we've bought stock in bulk initially to hold it and then sell it.
I think drop shipping is definitely something we should discuss, though.
Absolutely.
It's something I suppose we all have varying degrees of experience in. I think I've tried it a few times. I've received products from people that I know was drop shipped, and I'll just be honest, like I don't do it hardly ever. I've done it for a few international orders where shipping just like wipes out any money you're making, but I just don't like the idea of somebody receiving a piece of artwork that I created, but I've never seen the thing that they're receiving.
Yeah. And there's no care into the packaging or anything like that, and it can turn up in any sort of way. Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I kind of always felt that drop shipping is more on a larger scale. Like, you don't want to drop ship just one or two prints. You know, there's been many a times where the postage. Well, we can discuss the cost of postage and how it's a robbery at the moment. But there's been many a times where I've basically taken a hit just by posting stuff and for the postage. So, and I don't mind if it's one off here and there. And you know, I'm just grateful that somewhere else in the world my art is on their wall or whatever. But in terms of drop shipping, for me, I just think it's always been more of a kind of something I would consider when it was just too much for me to handle by myself. Do you know what I mean? Like, as an individual, and you know, if you get people in to help you, I guess I'd always get family members in to help me if it gets a lot. But if you get onto a larger scale of things and you want to start doing the Amazon type of thing, I think I think dropshipping is something I'd only ever consider if we ever got to that point.
For anyone who doesn't really know what we're talking about when we see dropshipping, which is possible, you can either hold stock and print it yourself, or get it ordered to your house and then send it yourself. Or there's companies online that you can upload your artwork to. They take the order, they package and post and send the order directly to your consumer or your customer, and then you make less money than you would, but you don't have to do none of the work.
It's effectively that's what Redbubble do, right?
Redbubble, it's exactly what they do. Yeah.
I think I think it's slightly different with somewhere like Redbubble because they take the order as well.
Yeah. They do it.
Whereas, like,
from start to finish, don't they?
Yeah, there's Prodigy and is it Printful are like the two big ones for like the kind of artwork that we produce, and there it's like you still have to take the order through like your website or Etsy, but then Callie's exactly right. It's just like you then just hand the order on to someone else. And I've actually, like, a couple of times, printers that I've worked with have offered to do that for me. But again, it wasn't something that I ever really felt like I wanted to do. I didn't want to not be part of that process. Yeah. So I've always opted to not do it. But I know people also do it for stuff like T-shirts, mugs, for example. I know a bunch of people that drop ship merchandise stuff where, then they're not really involved in the manufacturing of it in any way. So I know it definitely has its virtues, but it's just not something I've ever really necessarily wanted to do.
Yeah, it's something I've done and continue to do with T-shirts. And the reasons behind it is because, one, I don't have a T-shirt printer. Two, and this links to the things we've already discussed on this podcast, the suppliers for printing T-shirts in Liverpool and the surrounding areas always see the artwork that I take to them and go, do you want to go into a 50-50 partnership and split the profit? And I'm like, I just want you to print me T-shirts, mate. And I can never find a good one. And three, the profit margin on T-shirts is still big enough to make a decent amount if you drop ship. So, for example, if you sell a print for £10 and you're drop shipping a print, you will probably only make £2 or £3 on that, if that.
Yeah.
Whereas on a T-shirt, you can sell those for 20-25 quid, and you'll still make 7, 8, maybe £9 profit off a drop ship. So if the profit margin is higher, drop shipping is kind of worth it, depending on the product.
Yeah. I've always see, I'm always the opposite. I've always been completely against doing any of that just because I can't. Maybe it's me, but I can't bear the thought of basically not giving somebody money for free. But there's almost an element of that for me. Like I'm like, I can put it in an envelope. I can go to the post office. I could do all of that, and I get more profit margin, you know, for me and for the business. So like t-shirts. I mean, obviously I understand that I don't have a t-shirt printer, so I'd have to get someone to make it for me. And but I'd quite happily just pay the one-off. You know, I'd get so I used to do a pre-order thing, especially, and with my mugs as well, to a certain extent, where, you know, I knew exactly how many I needed to order, and I'd probably order, you know, 5 or 6 more on top just to cover, and then I'd get them sent to me in one bulk, and then I'd post them all out and sort of notify everyone. You know, the time frame, it's going to take a bit longer than, you know, 3 to 5 days to turn it around. But I always did that, and sometimes it killed me. It really did kill me. It really drained me, and I had to get family members into it. But it was just, I don't know, it's just something into me. Maybe I'm old school, but I just kind of like, I felt like I had to do it all because I was giving someone else money for free, which you're not. It doesn't make sense, you're not. But there was just something in me that I'm like, if I can do it, unless it gets to a scale where, like I said, the
purity of it.
Yeah, unless I get to a scale of where I'm selling, you know, 10,000, and obviously you can't do all that kind of stuff yourself, or, you know, thousands. It's stupid. But I was just like, yeah, I can do this. And I can do it. Yeah. And maybe I'm just trying to think. Maybe if I could go back in time, would I change it? Maybe, because it does. I mean, ultimately, we're illustrators, and that's our role. And when you end up spending hours packaging stuff and posting it, and by the time you finish that, I don't really want to sit in front of a computer and do anything. I just want to sit down and rest. So maybe I would, if I could do my time again, maybe I would go down that route and just, you know, get over my ego of trying to make that little bit more money. But then obviously I'm creating a lot of more time for myself to create more artwork. So maybe I would go down that route. And but I don't know why. It's just something I never really considered, and I don't know why I didn't consider. I just thought that if I can do it, then I'll just do it myself. So
I think that's the thing, isn't it? And I've struggled with the same conversation I've had with people where they say, like, don't waste your time posting stuff. You should be spending your time creating artwork. But I think when it comes to something as personal as a piece of art that you've created, or a product that you've created with your artwork on it, it's not as simple as just saying, separate the time out in your head. It feels like such a personal thing still.
Yeah.
So yeah. I agree with everything you said, but I think it's never as black and white as we want it to be when it comes to any art business.
Yeah, that's true.